Have you ever been out on a trail ride and thought, wow, what a wonderful way to experience the outdoors? No, I don't mean on a bike. I mean on a horse. Our next story is brought to us by Kayla.
Okay, so my name is Kayla Nash, and I'm going to tell you a story about the time that I got run over by a horse. So, for the last 4 out of 5 summers, I worked at Leona Meadows Camp, which is a summer camp in Northern California. And I have worked 3 of those years down at Cowboy Camp, which is like a separate entity from the base camp where all the kids who choose to go to that camp work almost entirely with horses the whole entire week. So it's a really special experience, and it means that I spend like literally all day with horses, which is one of my favorite things. So a couple summers ago, I decided to go on a staff ride with some friends of mine. And a staff ride is basically in the morning, half of the staff get up before the kids. We leave some to watch the kids, but the other half goes out and rides horses wherever we want, out on the trails and stuff in the national forest land, so that we get a chance to do some like actual riding instead of like during the day. Usually we're helping the kids, walking on the ground, usually not getting much opportunity to ride horses. So this particular day I went out with my cousin Lauren and a friend named Jonathan, and we decided to explore a new trail that we had known about but hadn't really gone on that summer yet. And it went right along this creek that went kind of through the pasture and then out. And it's in California in the summer, so there's not a lot of water. It's a pretty tiny little creek. And we were following the trail along, and the trail was right next to the creek for a while, and then it kind of diverted away from the creek for a bit. And then at some point, the trail turned very sharply towards the creek, which at that point was pretty deep into this canyon that the creek follows. And so we went down this very steep hill. It hadn't been very well used trail. There's like lots of shrubs and stuff in our face. And finally we like get to the bottom, like crashing through, and there's this tiny little clearing, and then this place where the trail crossed the creek, and you could see the trail on the other side. And there was a bridge, but the bridge was like pretty rotten wood, and it was honestly just like a footbridge so that humans could cross the creek pretty easily without getting their feet wet, but it wasn't really like a horse stable bridge. We kind of like looked at the situation like, we're just gonna have to walk the horses across the creek. I think my cousin Lauren was ahead, and she tried to get her horse to walk across, and her horse is like a little more high strung. And so she decided to get off her horse and walk her horse across. It went pretty well. Like, her horse was a little nervous, but obviously trusted her because they had a good rapport. And they walked across the creek and did fine. And then my friend Jonathan was riding this horse who was pretty old, had seen everything in its lifetime, I'm sure, was like, gave like no cares about anything and just went tromping through the whole creek. I, on the other hand, was riding this squirrely little pony named Elvis, and he was pretty unpredictable. We never let the campers ride him, like, on purpose. We didn't ride him very often. I decided to ride him just to see if I felt like we could get him into workable position later that summer. I was like, I know that this is going to be a problem. Crossing this creek with him is going to be a bad idea, like on top of him. So I decided to get off, and kind of where the creek crossing was, there was like a gravel wash in the middle of the creek. But like I said, it was summer in California, so there's not much water. It was like maybe a foot wide of water with like maybe 2 or 3 inches of water flowing through. And then this gravel bar that was, I don't know, maybe 6 feet across. And then another foot of water. And then the trail. So we're talking about very, very tiny amounts of water. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a chore, but we can make it across. So I went and stood on the gravel bar, just stepped over the water onto the gravel bar in the middle. And I turned around and was like pulling on his lead rope, trying to get him to go. And he was just like sitting back, kind of like a dog on his haunches, pushing his feet out in front of him and pulling back with his head, like not wanting to do it. And finally, my cousin's like, well, maybe if we start riding our horses a little further up the trail, he'll get kind of stressed that he's being left behind and, that he'll start moving. So they went up a little bit further up the trail, and sure enough, he got stressed that he was going to be left behind because horses are herd animals. And so he jumped literally like a rabbit or something, all four legs just like pogo sticked right over onto this gravel bar with me. And I could tell he was going to be super stressed right there in the middle. So I quickly turned around to jump over the last portion of the creek between us and the trail. And just as I was doing that, I didn't realize that behind me, Elvis was also doing the same thing. So we essentially both jumped at the same time, and he ended up landing his front hooves right on the back of my feet and knocking me down. And at that point, I fell really hard onto my knees and just took my hands and put them over my head, and he just trampled right over me. His two front legs went over me. His two back legs went over me. He stepped on my calves in the process, and then went sprinting up the trail to catch up with the other horses, and then went past the trail and past the horses and further up the trail. And because we were headed back towards the barn, I was like, oh, this stupid horse is going to go all the way back to the barn, and I'm going to have to walk the whole way. It's going to be such a pain. But luckily, he just went up the trail 50 feet and then got a little stressed that he was not with the herd again, and turned around and came back, and I got up and hobbled and got back on top of him. And we made it back to the barn just fine. I was of course, super fortunate that he was a tiny pony-ish type horse, not this massive giant horse. And the only thing that I really got hurt was my calves had these bruises where he had stepped on me, and my knees were really well bruised because I had fallen super hard, but it was not that bad. And then I went back to the camp, and we had worship with our campers that morning. I told this story, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're the coolest person ever. So anyway, it worked out pretty well in the end.
Wow. What do you like about horseback riding that makes it special from other ways of being outside or just other ways of spending time with animals? What is it about horseback riding that's just extra special?
So often, because I actually dirt bike a lot too, people will ask me why don't you just ride a dirt bike? That's so much more predictable. But I think working as a team with the animal is one of my favorite things. And especially once you build a relationship with them and they want to help you. It's it's like a dog. They want to be with you, and they're super social and stuff. And so working with a horse and you become a better rider, and they become better at doing whatever you're training them to do. So working as a team is one of those things that I just really love. Plus also it's more exhilarating to be riding this unpredictable animal than something that is so predictable. I don't know. It's an element of the unknown.
That's great. So what recommendations do you have and encouragement do you have for people that are interested in getting into horseback riding, who maybe don't have a horse right now, or maybe haven't done it before, or maybe have done it just a little bit, but they're interested in doing it more in the future?
Oh, horseback, I feel bad because horseback riding is pretty inaccessible to people. It's not just running or biking where it's, relatively more accessible. But I would say seeking out friends who have horses, or taking opportunities when they say oh, I'll take you riding, definitely jump on that for sure. I've taken a lot of newbies riding because in college I had a couple of horses for at least the first 3 years of college, and I take people out all the time. It's super fun. People would actually reach out to me and be like, hey, can I ride your horse? I'm yeah, of course. So reach out to those people and try them. Also, everyone does horses differently. So when you are riding horses with people, like really pay attention to how they want you to do things, because their horse is used to that. Horses are definitely animals of habit, and they really like predictability. So if they, if one owner does like their things their way, just follow along with that, just so that you're, not surprising the horse and that sort of thing. And then just like with anything, it requires like determination. So I've fallen off horses all the time, but the rule, like definitely within the horse world, is like, unless your back is broken, like you should be getting back on a horse that you just fell off of. Because it's a way to like show the horse that you're not going to be intimidated by their bad behavior if it was because of bad behavior, or show the horse like solidarity, like we both went through this scary experience together, so we'll come out of this together, that type of thing. So yeah.
Wow. That's wow. That seems to make a lot of sense. Like, I feel like for a lot of outdoor sports that are a little more difficult to get into, I feel like in general, a lot of people are actually willing to help people get into those activities and into those sports, with mountaineering or like with, say, kayaking. And it's cool to hear that horses are the same.
Yeah, for the most part,
For
I
the
think
most
it
part,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some people who do, of course, professional riding, and they have a really well-trained horse. And so to put someone who's not a good rider on them could break like good habits that the horse has. So, like be understanding, obviously, of people who have that situation. But honestly, like a lot of just like people you would meet at school and that sort of thing usually aren't as like riding as disciplined animals. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.